And it's time for the pre-show. Let's see if we can get our cameras all straightened out. Hello, everyone. Hey, chat room. Hello, everyone. We're going to get things going here. Let's pop out the chat so I can see what everybody's doing. Thanks for being here. For those of you who are tuning in to the replay, we're going to start in about 7 minutes. I don't know that I have all of the right things up and running on my side quite yet, but we're getting there. Yeah, that works. This is great. So far, so good. I hope everybody's doing well. Hello, everybody. Hey, chat room. Hey, Atlanta and downtown Houston, Texas. Oh, yeah, we got like 6 minutes to go, don't we? I better make sure this stuff's working. We should probably turn on a recording. I'm just saying. Since we're here, record and record. There we go. That was easy. We got the right graphics up. That looks good. Thanks for being here, everybody. Hello, Minneapolis and Atlanta, Malawi and Queens and Belgium and Southern California. There's Orlando. Thanks for being here. Wow. Okay. Got to get my myself organized here. Let's check cameras. Those look pretty good. I got a lot of spill off of this light. I should probably put on some type of egg crate or something. But in the meantime, that's where it is. I guess I could turn it off in the meantime. Let's see. Is this the off button? See? No, it's still a little bit of spill there, isn't it? How about if I turn off both of them? Still more. Maybe it's just my LCD. I don't know. We'll have to figure it out. Okay. Let's get more of this in place. Hello, Tacoma, Washington. More Orlando, Florida. Thanks for being here. Columbia, Maryland is checked in. There's Canada. Hello, Winnipeg. Thanks for being here. I'll let Mrs. Professor Messer know. Manchester in the UK is here. Oh, we got a lot. It is sort of Batcave-ish at times. You know, when you're seeing this, it looks like I'm just in this darkness, which, to be fair, I am at the moment. But normally when we're not doing a live stream, the windows are open, the sliding glass door is open. There's lots of light in here. It's actually quite nice. You just don't see that. All right, now I'm having a problem with another one of my connections. This is going to be a challenge. Let's see if I can figure out what to do here. We're going to figure out. There's always something. Let's put this here. And then if I do this, look at that. So now I can stand up without you doing this. Okay, where does this plug in? If only there was a way to plug and unplug these things. Okay. I think that may have fixed that. So that was a thing. Oh, we got folks in Iraq and Ecuador and Vegas and Pakistan and South Africa and Indiana. Lots of folks checking in. Let's see if, I don't know if what I did really fixed anything, but all the cameras are working. Do I have I need another graphic. This graphic goes here. Boop. There we go. That looks great. And it's all 220-1101 today. We're doing Core 1. So this will be good. All Core 1, all new questions. The thing that I just didn't actually fix anything. I got to do some troubleshooting later on. It's one of those where it never does what's going on, never happens when I'm just sitting here. It only happens when I'm live. It doesn't happen when I'm doing a test stream, which you don't see. I do private test streams. I change settings. I test things with YouTube. I do all of those things, and then no problems. Think, aha, I've solved the issue. No, you haven't solved the issue. I haven't solved anything. Nothing has been solved. But we'll figure it out. It doesn't affect you. It affects more of what I see on my side. You can kind of see down here what's kind of blocked, but there's a bottom aux display, and it just flickers from time to time. And that's what I see. It's in my way, and it's a problem. Let's see if I can change this to see properly the cache numbers. Those are important. And I think everything else is in pretty good shape. That was quick, wasn't it? We got connected, and now we can do a live stream, and hopefully I got everything ready to go. We'll get everything rocking and rolling. Cheeseland here. There's Canada. We got Baltimore, New Jersey, North Carolina, Connecticut, UK in here again. Thanks for being here, everybody. Thanks for checking in. Thanks for being in the stream. Let's close out the chat here. Let's change brightness. Let's turn the brightness down a little bit. Let's pull the chat up over here. Very nice. That needs to pop out. Let's do our stream health. Let's pop out the chat. Pop out the chat. Pop out the chat. Okay. Clear, 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 clear. All right. Oh, this is great. Okay. We got a minute to go, and I think it might all be together. So we'll start in just about 60 seconds. Get things going here. All new questions today from the 2011-01 A+ exam. That's the Core 1 exam. It's the latest, the greatest. All right. Why Mac OS? Oh, the reasons. It's every reason you're thinking of. All of them. All together. It's Mac OS because if it's rendering a big video, Mac OS doesn't reboot in the middle of the render. But wait, you could tell Windows not to reboot. Yeah, you can tell it that. It just won't. It will absolutely ignore you. Let's go to Keynote. Let's get a green light. Green, green, green it is. Green is good. And there we go. That's what I wanted. Well, it's top of the hour, everybody. I think I should figure out how to make all this stuff work. Now's the time. If you're going to do it, now's the time to do it. So let's do a live stream, everybody. And just then, the phone rang. Thank you, spammer. Well, at least they told me that I can make this silent. There we go. No more of that. Let's get a live stream going. Here we go. Hi, everybody. Thanks for being here. This is the March 2023 Professor Messer 220-1101 Core 1A+ study group coming to you live from our headquarters. I'm going to ask you in this first hour questions that come directly from the CompTIA A+ exam objectives. And if you are here live, you'll be able to answer live. I'll give you instructions in just a moment how you can do that. And then if you are watching this on the replay, just stay with us. Stick around. You can still follow along with us, answer the questions, and see how you do. If you are here live, I'd love for you to pop open a new browser window. You can go to this link that is right here. The link is professormesser.com/QA. That link will take you to the Professor Messer website. That is, or really the Q&A takes you to Socrative. It's not even my site. It's a third-party service we use to help us tally all the votes, to count up all of the different votes that are here. We would love for you to lock in there. Now, there's also an app for this, as you can see. The app is available on your favorite app store, and you're looking for an app that is the Socrative Student app. That is the name of the app, the Socrative Student app. There's plenty to see there as well. I've got lots to go through, and we've got all new questions. If you do either one of those, either browsing to professormesser.com/QA or going to the Socrative Student app, you will see a question is waiting for you. We call this our rewind question because of the question that we did last month. We're going to see how well we do this month. It's our one time we will recycle a question just to see if you're able to get in and answer the questions that are online. This question asks, what Windows directory is used when installing 64-bit applications? Is it Program Files x64 /Windows/System32? Is it Program Files? Is it /Windows/Apps? Or is it /Program Files x86? Now, the key to this is to answer online. There's the link you'll answer on. And, of course, please, no answers in the chat room. No hints in the chat room. We're going to pretend we're taking the exam. We have no resources available. We're just going to answer these the best we can. And we will come back to this question in just a moment. So stay with us on that one, and we'll find out what that answer happens to be. Well, thanks for being here. We do one of these every month for A+, for Core 1, Core 2, Network Plus, and Security Plus. So 4 live streams a month. You've hit the one That is the beginning of this month. We're doing the 220-1101 Core 1 in this. And of course, if you'd like to see any of the replays, they're all available on our YouTube channel. You can go to professormesser.com/YouTube, and even this one will be available on that YouTube channel just a few minutes after we hit the stop button. It's just automatically added to the YouTube channel. We also have daily pop quiz questions for A+ available on Twitter. Go to professormesser.com/Twitter. And if you like more of a graphical, picturesque version of the daily pop quiz question, you can find that at professormesser.com/Instagram. Sometime during this first hour, I will give you information on how you can earn a 1-hour webinar category CEU just by watching this either live or watching it on demand on our YouTube channel. So listen in on that. If you're someone who is collecting CEUs, that's something you might be able to use. If you don't know what I'm talking about, then it probably doesn't apply to you and you don't have to worry about it. We'll talk more about that in a moment. Today, we're talking about the half of the series of exams you have to take to earn your A+. You have to pass 2 different exams to earn your A+ certification. The 220-1101 and the 220-1102 are the 2 exams that you will need to take right now. Those were released on April the 20th of 2022, so relatively recently. It's not even been out a year at this point. We estimate that these exams will retire somewhere around the October timeframe of 2025. So if we are watching this now in March of 2023, you've got plenty of time for your studies. That's the point of that. Both of the exams are 90 minutes long. On the 220-1101, you need to earn a 675 on the exam on a scale from 100 to 900. 1102, you have to do a little bit better. You have to score 700 on a scale from 100 to 900. And as soon as you pass the exam, your certification is good for 3 years. As soon as you pass the second exam, your certification is good for 3 years. So once you earn your A+, it really doesn't matter what happens with the exams that they put out. You're already certified. So that's one of the benefits of earning that certification is all of those exam requirements and dates and all of the things we talked about won't matter to you because you will be already A+ certified. The A+ 220-1101 Core 1 consists of these different domains, as CompTIA calls them. They are mobile devices, networking, hardware, virtualization and cloud computing, and hardware and network troubleshooting. And all of those we will touch on to some degree during this live stream, so you get a little bit of everything as we step through it. I'll also let you know that we have a podcast audio version of this available as a replay afterwards. You can find it at professormesser.com/podcast. There are podcasts available for A+, Network Plus, and Security Plus. So if you don't have a need to watch the video side of this, or maybe you're driving or you're somewhere where you can't watch a screen, that might be a good option for you. And since it's in podcast format, it will just download automatically to your mobile device. So wherever you are, whenever you are, you can just punch it up and it's already available on your device. It's already downloaded and waiting for you. You can find that link at professormesser.com/podcast. So that makes things a little bit easier. As I mentioned, there is a video replay available immediately afterwards on YouTube. There's not only the YouTube videos on our channel, but we've got a playlist of those that it's also automatically added to, so you can find all of that. One thing you might notice if you could look over on the YouTube side, probably in about a day, you'll see all these timestamps magically appear. Well, it's not magic at all. It's maybe a little bit of magic, but all that magic happens thanks to Lori, my marketing manager. She goes through and watches all of this. Hey, Lori, how's it going? She's going through and putting in all the timestamps so that you can go back to any of these study groups and find exactly what you're looking for. That's in the YouTube video description. You can find all of that available on our YouTube channel at professormesser.com/YouTube. Now, of course, we're doing other things when we're not doing a live stream. We've got lots going on this side. And if you'd like to keep up with what's going on, maybe you'd like to study with others, maybe you'd like to ask some questions about the things that you are studying, we've got everybody over on our Discord. That is our text-based and now video and audio-based system for keeping track of everything. At night, during the day, you'll join in, and there might be people already studying in a chat room, in a voice room or a video room. And it's a great way to meet people. It's a great way to learn for the exam. It's really a great community. We'd love for you to check it out. You can find that at professormesser.com/Discord. Even yesterday, I added a dynamic voice channel feature so anybody can show up, punch a button, and they now have their own private or even public voice channel for people who would like to start their own study sessions. That makes it very, very easy. That person then has control of the voice session. It's a great setup. Find it at professormesser.com/Discord. Also want to let you know that eventually you're going to need to take the exam. You're going to have to sit in an exam room or take the exam online. And to do that, you have to pay to take the exam. You could, of course, go to the CompTIA website and pay full price to take the exam, but why would you do that when I have discounted vouchers already available on my website if you live in the U.S. or Canada and some U.S. territories? So regardless of the CompTIA exam you're taking, we've got discounted vouchers on my site. You don't need a discount code. You don't need an extension in your browser. You don't have to jump through any hoops. They're just already discounted. So that's a great way to get your hands on the voucher that you might need. And if you purchase a voucher on my site, I will, of course, give you even more. So this isn't like going to a third-party site and getting a voucher and all you get's a voucher. If you buy it on the Professor Messer website, not only do you get a voucher, you also get a copy of my Exam Hacks ebook, which has a list of tips and tricks that might help you during the study process and even while you're taking your exam. These are tips and tricks that I've accumulated through an entire career of taking these certification exams, and maybe some of these tips and tricks can help you as well. That's just included for free when you purchase a voucher at professormesser.com/vouchers. Let's now talk about that question. That was our rewind question from last week. That question is, what Windows directory is used when installing 64-bit applications? Is it Program Files x64, Windows System 32, Program Files, Windows Apps, or Program Files x86? Let's see how you did. See if we remember how we did from last month. We can see that 50% of you, 50, half of you, have said the answer is Program Files. That is what half of you have chosen. 32% say it's Program Files x64. 13% said Program Files x86, and then single digits for Windows System 32 and Windows Apps. So if we go with the now majority, 50% of you say Program Files, we can probably have a look at where we would put Program Files. Of course, those differences in a 64-bit application is compared, of course, to a 32-bit application. Those are different types of applications. They are compiled differently. They run differently depending on the architecture that you're running them on. A lot of our computers these days have 64-bit architectures, and most everybody is running a 64-bit version of Windows, I think, at this point. I should probably look at the deployment numbers, but if I had to guess, that's probably what I would guess at this point. We dropped 32-bit by the wayside relatively quickly once Windows kind of caught on that we needed to have 64-bit. And if you're running a 32-bit operating system, you can't run 64-bit operating systems, although it does work the other direction. If you're running a 64-bit operating system, you can run 32-bit programs in the operating system. So you've got a few different options there, but where the applications are stored are different depending on whether it's a 32-bit app or 64-bit app. The 32-bit app is stored in Program Files x86. I know that shouldn't it be x32? Shouldn't that be what it is? But the x86 is a reference to the older Intel architecture, which used the 8086, the 286, and the 386, and the 486. Technically, the 586 as well. And then they stopped using the numbers and started using names for their different chipsets. So a 32-bit application is Program Files x86, but that wasn't our question. Our question asked what the Windows directory would be used when installing 64-bit applications. And for 64-bit apps, it's just Program Files. There's no x86. There's nothing extra there. There's no x64. It's just Program Files. So those of you that answered C, /Program Files, 51% of you got that one absolutely correct, which, by the way, was better than what we did last month. So those of you who've been studying, you remember the question from last month. You did a great job at remembering it again this month to get us where we needed to be with that question. Well, as many of you know, on the exam, you get a handful of questions at the very beginning of the exam that are not multiple choice, like that last question was. Instead, the first handful of questions you get will be performance-based questions. That's what CompTIA calls them. They are questions that are anything but multiple choice. There's no strict definition. It could be a matching question. It could be a fill in the blank. It could be putting things in a particular order. It may be a drag and drop question. There might be images that you have to identify. It's something other than multiple choice. So one of the things we always do in our study groups is our first new question of the month is always going to be a performance-based question. And I have one for you today that is also a performance-based question. This is a matching question. So let's see how you do with this one. The question asks, match the printer to the definition. And I have 4 printers listed. I have an Impact, 3D, Laser, and Inkjet. Now you'll also notice that I have 6 different application or printer descriptions on here, A through F. So let's go through each one of those for the folks listening in on the podcast side. The first is heat is used to fuse the output to the page. The second is paper changes color when heated. The third is a ribbon contains ink used in the final output. D is pigment can clog the print heads. The fifth option is output is created over multiple passes on a print bed. And the last is that it requires special paper to produce output. Now you'll notice there are 4 printers listed, but 6 different descriptions. That means 2 of the descriptions will not be used when we finally give our answer. If you think you would like to answer this one, you can find it on professormesser.com/QA. Lock in your answer. This is more of a fill in the blank when you see it online, but that fill in the blank question, if you think they're already in the right order, you could put 1A, 2B, 3C, 4D. That's all you have to submit. Just remember what you submitted because you can't see it on the screen once you submit the answer. I know, but that's sort of the way it works. And for extra credit, there will be 2 left over. See if you know what those 2 might be. So sort of a reverse matching fill in the blank sort of scenario. We'll extend the capabilities just a bit to be able to make that work. So again, match the printer to the description. We have Impact, 3D, Laser, and Inkjet. The descriptions are heat is used to fuse the output to the page. Paper changes color when heated. A ribbon contains ink used in the final output. Pigment can clog the print heads. Output is created over multiple passes on a print bed and requires special paper to produce output. So you got a number of options there. While you're mulling that over, I want to thank Mir in the chat room with the $5 super chat. Mir writes, thank you for all the amazing work you do. I'm taking the 1101 tomorrow. Your practice tests were extremely helpful. I'm so glad to hear that. I spent a lot of time writing those 1101 practice exams. I'm glad they were able to help you. Mir, thank you also for the $5 super chat and best of luck with your exam tomorrow. We also have a Dr. Chungus with the $10 super chat. Passed my Network Plus yesterday. People are not lying when they say Professor Messer is the best to learn from. Well, that's very kind of you. Thanks for your super chat. Thanks for the $10 of super chat support. And thanks for the kind words as well. I'm glad that our study materials were able to help just a little bit. I always say that you're the one who has to do the hard work. I'm simply providing you with the information you'll be able to use once you step into that exam room. Let's see if you knew what the answer was for these. Let's step through each one at a time, and let's see if we can decide to match the printer with the description. So our first printer is Impact. An Impact printer, usually in our homes and offices, an Impact printer is usually a dot matrix printer, but there are other types of Impact printers as well. I used to work on a chain printer that we would have connected to a mainframe. So all of these are Impact printers, but the one thing that was the same across all of them is that there was a ribbon, and the Impact printer impacted the ribbon impacted the paper, and that's what made the output on the page itself. So anytime you see a ribbon or a ribbon cartridge, you're probably working with an impact printer. Next on our list is a 3D printer. Not everybody has a 3D printer in their home, but if you've ever worked with a 3D printer, there are different types of 3D printers. The one that would match the description that we have on this list is answer E, where output is created over multiple passes on a print bed. And so this might apply if you have a resin type printer where you are creating things on this print bed, but the print bed is basically the print area that you're using for 3D. So if you're building it up from the bottom, that's also a good way to use 3D printers and to go multiple passes to build out that 3D, take the 3D image and create something that's actually physically 3D with your 3D printer. Third on the list is a laser printer. Laser printers are very common in the workplace, maybe not so common at home, but they're relatively inexpensive these days. You might have a laser printer at home. That matches best with the option of A, heat is used to fuse the output to the page. That's one of the last phases of laser printing, is that toner, which is just sitting on top of the paper, goes into the fuser, where heat and pressure are used to effectively melt the toner permanently to the printed page. So without that heat, you would not be able to melt the toner. It would come out of the printer and you could use your finger and smudge all of the toner. You may have even seen that if you've worked with a laser printer that had a bad fuser assembly. We also have our fourth printer, which is an inkjet printer. Inkjet printers are, I would say those probably are the most common you would have at home. One of the challenges with inkjet is that the ink itself, it very commonly will clog the print heads. That's why if you have an inkjet printer at home, you may notice that every day about the same time, it goes through a cleaning process without you even touching it. And what it's doing is trying to clean off any excess ink that might be on the outside of that print head. Cleaning off all of that will help you maintain the print heads and allow you to continue to print until you're able to finish that particular ink cartridge. So those are the four. Impact is a ribbon, contains ink used in the final output. A 3D printer has output created over multiple passes on a print head. A laser printer uses heat to fuse the output to the page. And an inkjet printer has pigment that can clog the print heads. That means there were two of these we did not use. I told you we had a little bit of extra credit. For example, answer B was paper changes color when heated and requires special paper to produce output. That's almost very similar to each other, isn't it? That was the one I didn't put in this list. The ones that aren't in this list are thermal printing. So whenever you go to a store and they print your receipt, that's very commonly on thermal paper. That's a special paper that changes color when heat is applied to it. So if you need special paper or you need paper that changes color when heated, those two categories fit very well into the thermal printer. So if you answered thermal for both of those, I'll give you credit for both of those. Although there's lots of printers out there that need special paper, but the ones we're talking about are just the ones that are listed in the CompTIA exam objectives. So that is our performance-based question of the month. Hopefully you were able to categorize the printers in the right way. There's a lot of printers on the exam, so make sure you're very familiar with those. Make sure you get your hands on those exam objectives and you go through every single one of those different parts of every one of those printers. I also want to thank Graveyard Grog in the chat room with the $10 super chat, who says, just wanted to say I failed 1001 miserably 3 years ago. Well, that makes me feel bad. I gave up. Now I picked it back up. Okay, I'm feeling better. Your videos are helping tremendously. I have more faith now. Your material's spot on. Thank you. That's very kind. Thank you, Graveyard Grog, for the super chat, the $10 super chat. And I got to tell you, this is an exam you can pass. Anyone can pass these A+ exams as long as you apply yourself, you use the exam objectives, get a good book, get good videos, get some great hands-on, get some great Q&A. You're going to have no problem when you slide into that exam and be able to take that. So always, these are it's never any one thing. I like to tell people, in fact, you mentioned not just video, all of your study sources, study groups, etc. I have to agree that you have to use many different types of training resources to have the best possible chance of passing this exam. Stick with it. You're going to pass this exam. We will pull you through and make this exam all be passing colors for you once you're done with that. Let's do some more questions along those lines. Speaking of passing, let's see how we do with some more questions coming in. I have a multiple choice based question. Back to the multiple choice. This one asks, a system administrator needs to charge a new smartphone for a new employee. Which of the following would be used for this task? Is it Thunderbolt, Lightning, DB9, NFC, or Hotspot? Got a few different options available to use. The question again is that a system administrator needs to charge a new smartphone for a new employee. Which of the following would be used for this task? Is it Thunderbolt, Lightning, DB9, NFC, or Hotspot? Now, if you think you know the answer, go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. It's got to be one of these, right? A through E. Now, normally on the exam, you only get 4 options. You'll notice in my study group, I give you 5. I like to make it a little bit harder on the study groups. So this is where we go through the process of really trying to figure out what the best option would be for determining where we need to go with what we are familiar with. So that's where you should go, is to professormesser.com/QA and lock in what you think the answer happens to be. This is a section at the very beginning of the exam where you can get an understanding of what options might be there. And we'll talk more about what I think you might find on the exam once we get through this. So let's see how you did with this one. A lot of people have locked in their answer, which makes me think we're going to do very well on this one. The question again is, a system administrator needs to charge a new smartphone for a new employee. Which of the following would be used for this task? Is it Thunderbolt, Lightning, DB9, NFC, or Hotspot? Let's show the results. 74% say Lightning, but 20% say Thunderbolt. So we have a little bit of a meteorological discussion that we need to have around those two technologies. 4% of you said NFC, and only 1% said DB9, which is also tied for the 1% that said Hotspot. These days, it's a challenge sometimes to find the right cable with the right connection to be able to make that particular thing happen. But I think for those of you that are familiar, especially with sort of the Apple ecosystem, then you're probably very familiar with charging your phones, and that's probably the folks that chose Lightning as the correct answer. Lightning is a proprietary Apple connector. These days, it's been around for so long that it seems that everybody has a Lightning cable somewhere that you could borrow or plug into. Very common for iPhone and iPad. It's a technology that's sort of on the end of its run. I think everybody knows at this point that Apple has already started putting USB-C connectors on their mobile devices. And I think we'll start to see other folks you'll start to see other models come out of phones and iPads that will also have USB-C relatively shortly. Finally, the rest of the industry is caught up to what Lightning was able to do for us a very long time ago. So why not switch over to that, and then everybody can just use one cable? Makes perfect sense. Lightning is the answer that we were looking for in this question, and you can see that 73% of you chose Lightning as the correct answer. That's the one we were looking for. The Lightning connectors are extremely useful for your Apple devices. I just got a new set of a new Apple device, and that one, in this particular case, that one requires some Lightning connector. So they send you a Lightning cable to plug in. So not everything's converted yet, but I'm sure we'll see that in the future. Now, the question in the chat room, so folks who are familiar with this, Thunderbolt is a real connector type. That's not something I just made up. That's a real connection, but it's not a connection that's used to charge mobile phones. Somebody in the chat, and this is something that happens too, is people say, wait, you didn't say whether it was Apple, whether it was Android, or anything else. You just said it was a phone. Okay, well, let's say that it's a Android. What would be your choice? You wouldn't have one. There's no choice here to plug in for Android, because Android doesn't use Thunderbolt or Lightning or DB9 or NFC or Hotspot. So that's why in this particular question, if you read it very carefully, it says, which of the following would be used for this task? We really do want to know of what's available on the screen, what is the task? No, that's not a trick question. That's very straightforward. That's probably nothing on here would have been the right answer had we not put lightning. None of these would be right. So lightning really is the only possible answer you could have chosen given the options that were available. And this is something you will find on the exam, is you might see a question asked on the exam and you think, oh, that's USB, a mini USB. Like you know immediately what that might be. It's a micro USB. It's a lightning. It may be something that you immediately know what it happens to be. But you'll also see in the list, the thing you're thinking of may not even be in this list. So you have to find what is the right, or in this case, which would be used of the following options would be used. So you have to take into account what the options are to be able to make that happen. So I would absolutely make sure you're very familiar with this as you're going through it and working through the details. So let's go through these other options. 20% of you chose Thunderbolt. Thunderbolt is a very high-speed connection, very commonly used to connect to very high capacity or high throughput external devices. So if you are connecting, for example, an external hard drive or an external SSD, then you're probably wanting to connect that with some of the highest throughput you can possibly have. Thunderbolt is a technology that provides those very high throughputs with an external connection. There's different types of interfaces for Thunderbolt. I think a lot of people in the chat room are thinking USB-C is the same thing as Thunderbolt, but it is not. Thunderbolt is a signal that is sent across a wire. USB-C is a connector that is on the back of your computer, and that USB-C could send Thunderbolt. It could send USB signals. It could send video signals. There's lots of things that can happen. But obviously, Thunderbolt does not imply a particular type of charging method for mobile phones. So that's not going to be your right answer. It will never be the right answer. We aren't connecting your phone with Thunderbolt to be able to charge it. We're instead using Lightning to be able to do that. I mean, you could just as easily plug Lightning into a USB connection. That's something you have to think about. USB-C is a connector and not a type of data. So make sure you're familiar with the differences between both of those, because that might pop out on the exam and you may need to know the specifics of those. We also did not choose NFC. Near field communication is a wireless technology that is used to transfer data between mobile devices, but it does not provide any charging capabilities. We also have 2% that choose DB9. DB9 is a connector type, and it's commonly used for serial, but it could be used for a lot of different things. But DB9, being a connector, doesn't provide any type of charging capabilities for mobile devices either. And then lastly, hotspot. Hotspot is a way that you can share an internet connection through wireless connections. That's not a charging mechanism either. The best option here, the only option here that makes any sense, is the 75% of you that chose option B, Lightning. So it's incredibly important that you read through the question. It's incredibly important you read through every single answer and that you're familiar not only with what the right answer is, but this is a really good example of knowing what all the wrong answers are, because if you don't know what those wrong answers are referring to, you may not get the answer right to begin with. Let's shift gears and do some others on this particular set of questions that I have. Here's your next question on the list, and it asks, which of the following DNS records identify servers authorized to send email on behalf of a domain? Is that DKIM, Quad A, DHCP, SPF, or DMARC? Which of the following DNS records identify servers authorized to send email on behalf of a domain? Is that DKIM, Quad A, DHCP, SPF, or DMARC? All of those are real things. That's not just me putting in a bunch of A's because I was lazy. There's other things I do because I'm lazy, but that's not one of them. These are all real things. You need to know what every single one of those. Hopefully that can help you. If you want to know the answer, here is where you can lock in your answer. Go to professormesser.com/QA. Follow the link on your screen to lock in that answer. Please, no answers in the chat room. Please, no hints in the chat room. We're going to figure this out all on our own as if we are sitting for the exam, and no Googling. No, do not Google. Do not make that happen. Do not do all of those. There are a number of DNS records you need to know on the A+ exam, and this is one of them. So make sure you're familiar with all of these. In fact, if you see one of these in the list and you don't know what that is, you don't know what DKIM or Quad A or DHCP or SPF or DMARC is, make sure you go back in this list and figure out where that happens to fit. Make sure you make a note of it and you understand what that technology is and how you would use that technology, especially in the scope of DNS records, because each one of those is a DNS record type. This is a good one. Hopefully you've been studying your DNS records. Let's find out if you have. This one again asks, which of the following DNS records identify servers authorized to send email on behalf of a domain? Is that DKIM, Quad A, DHCP, SPF, or DMARC? We look at the results, we don't know. We have DKIM with 21%, I guess 26% said DHCP. That's not even the right thing. Where did that come from? We've got 25% say DMARC, 21% said SPF, 20% said DKIM, and 8% said Quad A. So this is one of the things that is nice to go through, is figuring out what this is. It looks like we really have a four-way tie for first place. We're sort of separated out between all of these. And if you're somebody who is in charge of configuring your emails for your domain, or you notice that a lot of the emails that you're sending from your company are ending up in the spam folder of the recipients, it may be because one or more of these technologies is not set properly on your DNS. So I really recommend you go through and have a look at what the different options are. But the one that determines what servers are authorized to send mail on your behalf are listed in a record in your DNS called a Sender Policy Framework, or SPF. That Sender Policy Framework means that you could put in all of the different types of mail servers that could possibly send mail on your behalf. So let me give you an example. This is one. This is an SPF record, early SPF record at professormesser.com, which said that there was a single site, a single server that's able to send emails on our behalf. That's because I use an outgoing email service called Mailgun to send all of that mail that you receive from me. So if you purchase a set of course notes and you get a thank you message from me, you get instructions on how to download those course notes, that email was sent from Mailgun. But what if I've also got a third party that is sending daily pop quiz questions, which I have? Well, I would need to add another mail server onto that list so that that mail server would be authorized to send all of those messages. And I simply add it to that same SPF record, the Sender Policy Framework, to be able to make that happen. It is not shortest past first. It's so close to OSPF, but it is not OSPF. It's just SPF. And it is used exclusively for email. It's an important configuration. So you might want to look if you're in a company. In fact, you can look at everybody's public DNS to know if they have an SPF record set, because the SPF record has to be visible to everyone who's receiving email, so they know whether this is good or bad emails that are being sent. I configure mine. You can configure it just by changing the text that's in the document, or you may have a web-based front end to your email SPF settings in your DNS, and you can go to your DNS and change any of the settings for this text record to have SPF in the middle of it. It is a text record in your DNS server. So make sure you're familiar with what those might be. This is extremely useful if you happen to be seeing a lot of emails ending up in the wrong folders of your recipients. You need to check your SPF, and you also need to check your DMARC. Both of those work together along with DKIM to be able to determine, is the mail being sent to the right place? SPF decides, lets people know, is this email being sent from an authorized server? If it comes from a different server, you could send it to spam. DKIM makes a determination, especially if you go into the DNS, you'll see all of these different text records. The DKIM provides a public key that people can confirm because you will digitally sign the mail that's being sent out, and that it provides a definite connection between you and the mail that's being sent. And then lastly, DMARC is a policy record. It says evaluate the SPF, evaluate the DKIM, and if these don't sync up, if the SPF doesn't work, if it doesn't apply, or the DKIM doesn't apply, then you can determine what happens with that mail. The mail is deleted. So no one would be able to use to spam based on your email addresses, because you could tell the recipients, if you receive anything that doesn't match DKIM, it doesn't pass SPF, just throw it out. And that's a very common way to prevent somebody from spoofing your emails so that other people receive things on your behalf. All three of those work together. Make sure you're familiar with all three. We also have DHCP on here. The Dynamic Host Configuration Protocol is obviously not a DNS record. That's something that is a separate process to automatically assign IP addresses. And then Quad A is a DNS record. Quad A is an address record for IP version 6. So IP version 4 records are A records, and then IPv6 records are Quad A records, just so we can differentiate between those very easily in the DNS configuration. So those of you that answered SPF got it absolutely correct. That's what we were looking for, the sender policy framework, and 23% of you got that one right. It actually came in third place because DHCP was 25%, DMARC was 25%, SPF was 23%, DKIM was right behind it with 20%. So this, I think, if you aren't familiar with the relationship of all three of those, of the SPF, of the DKIM, and of the DMARC, make sure you're familiar with those relationships. That's really going to help you if you get a question about any of those on the exam and the DNS records you would use to make that happen. And you can even look at the DNS records that are on ProfessorMesser.com. You will see all three of these. They're updated and changed whenever I make updates and changes to our email configurations. So that's something you may want to look into. It might add a little bit more clarity to the configurations and options that you might have there. Lots to go through. Hopefully that's given you some perspective on the type of questions you might get around DNS records. But of course, there are tons of topics on the A+ exam, everything from hardware to operating systems to Linux to Windows to Mac OS to command lines and more. So much more. The A+ exam is extensive in what it can provide. And of course, I have all of these videos. I've got 137 videos in my library for A+, 19 hours of content. And I recognize not everybody's going to have time to go through 19 hours of video. So what I've done is take all of the text from the videos, all of the important graphics from the videos, all of the important tables, and I put them into one set of course notes. These course notes are available in a digital form. That's the one you see here as I flip through the PDF. There's also a physical form. Here's the front of it. So this physical form is a printed book with exactly the same information, but it's something that you can take along with you in a printed form. And it has everything in it. All of the tables, all of the important charts, all of the graphics, all of the text, everything is in here, so that once you watch the videos, this makes a very good way to quickly reference the information that's contained in every set of the videos. And as you can see, it's indexed. It also steps through every video in the same order that you will find them in our video index. And it's a great way to support what we do here on the website. So I think that's a win-win. You'll find both 1101 and 1102 course notes available on my website. You can either use the pull-down menus at the top of the site or simply browse over to ProfessorMesser.com/1101 notes. That's another good way to do it. If you get the physical edition, and I will ship this to you, you'll get the digital version for free. So while you're waiting on this to arrive in your physical mail, you'll be able to download and use the digital version immediately. So put the digital version on all the devices you use. Take the book along with you wherever you happen to be, something you can easily read through. And now you've got all of those quick references, all from our entire video series. Hopefully that can help you with your studies, just one of the many things you'll find on our site that may be able to help. Find that at professormesser.com/1101 notes. Let's do another question. I've got one here. This question asks, an administrator is installing a new cable modem at a remote site. Which of the following connectors is used to connect the modem to the cable company network? Is it F connector, RJ45, USB-C, DB9, or RJ11? An administrator is installing a new cable modem at a remote site. Which of the following connectors is used to connect the modem to the cable company network? Is that F connector, RJ45, USB-C, DB9, RJ11? We just talked about some of these, didn't we? So this is one where if you think you know the answer, please don't answer in the chat room. You want to answer right here at this link, professormesser.com/QA, to lock in your answer. And as KB says in the chat room, KB has locked in their answer and said, I am confidently incorrect on this one, perhaps. We'll see, maybe or maybe not. This is a task somebody might provide to you. They say, here's a bunch of stuff. Here's your box full of things. Take this box full of things to the remote site. You need to install the cable modem. Go. And you need to look through the box. Do I have the right cable to plug this in? Do I have the right connector to plug this in? Let's find out. Let's see if we do. Follow the link on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in what you believe that particular answer is. I have many boxes of cable connectors. I should pull my boxes out and just show them to you. Why do I keep all these cables around that I'm never going to use? They've been sitting in this box for years. Well, there it is. That's my dirty secret. I've just got a hoarded bunch of cables and power. Although they are separated, there is a enormous useless box of network cables, an enormous useless box of power cables, an enormous useless box of everything else. So I've got 3 useless boxes in the studio doing exactly that. Now, the problem is that every once in a while, you run into a situation where you're actually able to use one of those cables, and all it does is help reinforce that you need to store more of them. It's never good. I'm an very organized hoarder. I'm hoarding, but it's in a very, very good and easy way to find what you might need. It's not sitting around you don't have to walk around them. It's in a box. It's labeled. It's perfect. That's garbage I can live with. Let's see how you did. Speaking of garbage you can live with, let's see how you did with this question. This question asked, an administrator is installing a new cable modem at a remote site. Which of the following connectors is used to connect the modem to the cable company network? Is that an F connector, RJ45, USB-C, DB9, or RJ11? How did you answer? Let's find out. We'll click the button. And, we're a little torn here. Now we have 40% that say RJ45 and 39% that say F connector. I'm going to call that a two-way tie for first place, which is very unusual. We don't commonly get that. So we're going to figure out, is it the F connector? Is it the RJ45? Or is it the 13% of you that said RJ11? Is it the 8% of you that said DB9? And for as awesome as USB-C is, nobody said USB-C. 0% of you said USB-C. So that's an interesting one that we need to work through. So let's kind of get rid of the small ones. Let's focus on F connector and RJ45. And I think what we need to focus on is the question that says, which of the following connectors is used to connect the modem to the cable company network? Now, obviously, when you plug in a modem, there's one side of the modem goes to your service provider. The other side of the modem or device or router or whatever you're plugging in goes to your equipment. So there's the real challenge, is knowing there's one type of connector to your equipment. It's a different type of connector to the service provider network. So what connector are we using to plug into the service provider network? In this case, that's the cable company network. And what we were looking for to plug in is an F connector. An F connector is most commonly associated with cable company networks. Plugging in a television, many televisions have an F connector right on the back of them. Even today's modern high-definition 4K, 8K monitors and televisions still have an F connector on the back of them in many cases. So this is one that can really help you if you're trying to do that. You've also may notice there are different types of cables used that have this connector type on them. It's common that you would find an RG6 cable. That's the type of coax cable. So the cable itself, for instance, the cable is the RG6 part, and then the connector plugging into the cable that you're putting on the end of it is the F connector. So that's what it is. In fact, here is an image of plugging into a cable modem, and that's exactly where you would plug in. You would use that F connector with the coax cable to plug in to that high-speed internet connectivity. Now, on the other side of this modem is probably an RJ45 connector. RJ45s very, very commonly associated with connecting to the Ethernet side of this cable modem. So I think that's pretty important if you are someone who is working with these technologies, that you ask, which side are we plugging into? Are we plugging into the service provider side, or are we plugging into our local connection side? That's what we want to do. And this is very useful. In fact, the F connector itself is, people have asked in a previous study group, what's the F for? What's the F in the connector? Why is it an F connector that we would have there? Well, it's because the company that designed these connectors back in the day just numbered them or labeled them as alphabetical numbers. There's an A connector, a B connector, a C connector, a D connector, an E connector, an F, a G, an H. Goes through the whole list of things. But the only one that really stuck in this large category of connectors is this one. Everybody decided we're not going to use A through E. We're not going to use G through whatever is there. We're just going to use this one. And the one that everybody decided that they would focus on, that would be the standard that everyone would use, is the F one. So the F connector is what that ended up being. And we couldn't come up with a better name for it, apparently. That's as good as we get. We didn't really think outside the box. The marketing team wasn't involved in this one, or maybe they were. I don't know. But F connectors is what we have there. That's the one that is the answer to this question. F connector, 40% of you answered A, F connector. That is the right one we were looking for. Now, if you were connecting the modem to your local computer, well, that would be different. That would be an RJ45 connector, because that's what we would commonly plug in for Ethernet. So RJ45 would be correct if this talked about connecting the modem to your local router or your local laptop or your local computer. I would choose RJ45, but that wasn't the question. The question specifically talked about the cable company network, and that uses the F connector if you're doing coax almost exclusively. We have other options here. RJ11 would be one that we would plug into our company, to the provider network, if the provider was DSL, because DSL, the digital subscriber line, uses the existing phone lines in a home to provide that connectivity, and the existing phone lines use the smaller RJ11 connectors. But in this case, it's a cable company. So the cable modem is what we were looking for. And because it's a cable modem, it's not going to be RJ11. It's going to be an F connector. We talked earlier about the DB9 connectors. Those are serial connectors commonly used to plug in these days, to plug into infrastructure devices for configuration. So for a router, a switch, sort of the older versions of those routers and switches would use DB9 or use some type of serial connection. These days, they're usually an RJ45 that you're running those RS-232 signals over, or you're plugging in with a USB connection and running RS-232 connections or signals over that. And USB-C, nobody answered that one, but as we mentioned earlier, USB-C is a common connector type that you could also use to send a lot of different types of signals over. In this case, though, running a cable modem from the provider is not going to use USB-C. It's going to use an F connector almost exclusively. Are there other connections that coax uses? Well, there are a lot of different connections for coax. It just depends on the type of technology and the type of use case that you have. But for cable modems, 100% of the time, you're going to be plugging into a an F connector. I hate saying 100%, but it effectively is 100%. F connectors are commonly used for cable modems connecting to the cable company's network. Obviously, if it's not a copper connection, you would not use an F connector because F connector is exclusive to a copper connection on those links. Let's do another question. Let's move past hardware connections and let's try this one. This question asks, a user's computer is not able to start a virtual machine from a hypervisor running in Windows. Which of the following would be the most likely reason for this issue? Would that be network congestion, faulty SSD, incorrect video resolution, or VT not enabled? A user's computer is not able to start a virtual machine from a hypervisor running in Windows. Which of the following would be the most likely reason for this issue? Would it be network congestion, faulty SSD, incorrect video resolution, or VT not enabled? If you think you know the answer, go to professormesser.com/QA to lock in your answer. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. We're going to see if we can get our virtual machine up and running on a hypervisor in Windows. If you haven't used a virtual machine with hypervisor in Windows, you should absolutely do that, especially since it's on the exam. It's easy to download a free hypervisor. You could download VirtualBox, for example. That is a free product from the folks at Oracle. VirtualBox has a number of VMs that you could configure on your system or a number that you can download, but I highly recommend installing and setting up your own VMs for a couple of reasons. One, you learn the process, and secondly, you never know exactly where these VMs are coming from. So I always tell people, make sure if you are going to use a VM from a third party that you trust that third party implicitly. Be a very easy way to have something show up suddenly on your system because you installed a VM that was infected with some type of malware. Nobody wants that to happen. We'll have to see what we think this might be. So lock in your answer. Go to professormesser.com/QA and see if you know what the answer happens to be. I have to plug that in. I have a hypervisor I run in Mac OS. I use Parallels. It runs amazingly in Parallels. If you're running a Mac, that's a good way to do it. You have to pay for that one, but I also use VirtualBox in Mac OS. It works great as well. VirtualBox runs in Linux, Mac OS, and Windows, so you can run it on practically anything. It's a great hypervisor. It's very fast. It's very well supported, and it's free. Can't beat that. Let's see if you know the answer to this one. The question asked, a user's computer is not able to start a virtual machine from a hypervisor running in Windows. Which of the following would be the most likely reason for this issue? Is it network congestion, a faulty SSD, an incorrect video resolution, or VT is not enabled? And what did you answer? We bounced back pretty well on that one, didn't we? We got 86% of you say VT not enabled, and then it's all single digits from there. 6% say network congestion, 4% said incorrect video resolution, 3% say faulty SSD is what we were looking for. So most of you, 87% of you, say VT not enabled. And that's because if you're running a hypervisor within an operating system, these days, the hypervisor software uses hardware built into the CPU of your computer to make the entire process run so much faster. And to be able to do that, you have to make sure those features are enabled in your BIOS so that the software can take advantage of those features of your CPU. And depending on the CPU that you are using, if you're using an Intel CPU, you need to turn on VT, which is short for virtualization technology. Again, they just right on the nose with that particular name. AMD called it something a little different. They called it AMD V. They worked just as hard to get a name for this. I think they pretty much decided we can probably throw that one away. We don't need a marketing term for that. So if you're running an AMD CPU, make sure AMD V is turned on. If you're running an Intel CPU, make sure that VT, or virtualization technology, is turned on in your BIOS. And that way you're able to start up a hypervisor, use the capabilities of that hypervisor. If it's not turned on, you will get a message when you start up the hypervisor, and it will tell you, You're not running VT. You're not running AMDV. Something is not turned on in your BIOS, and they give you documentation on what you can do to help turn on those features and be able to use those with virtualization in your operating system. So hopefully that's given you some perspective of things you may want to use. This one is very clearly VT not being enabled, and that's the one we were looking for to get virtualization running in our system. Network congestion would not cause a problem with starting a VM. Might cause a problem in using a VM, but not starting it up. So that's not the issue. A faulty SSD, well, that might cause everything to be an issue. But in that case, you probably wouldn't even be running the hypervisor or even an operating system at that point. That would not be the issue. If everything else is working on the SSD, your virtualization is probably working on the SSD as well. And then an incorrect video resolution might change what you're able to see within the VM. It might make it difficult or make it very small or very large to see on the screen, but it's not going to limit the ability of that VM to start or be used. So the only option here, the one that makes the most sense, the one that 87% of you chose, is VT not enabled, and you'd be absolutely correct. Now, for those of you that are watching this video for continuing education unit credit, I want to let you in on the process that you should use to be able to make this happen. The question is about, or the process really starts on the Professor Messer website. At the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website is a Contact Us link. In that Contact Us link, put your name, your email address. In the subject line, put March 2023. I'll figure it out from there. And then in the body of the message, on a line by itself, with nothing around it and no other text, put the super secret code word of the month, network congestion. Network congestion is the super secret code word of the month. And if you send that message, oh, by the way, you could also put anything else you would like in that message. I read through every single one of these. I get hundreds of these, so I'm not able to respond back, but I do read through every single one that you send to me. So thanks for the messages you put in there. Some of them are quite amusing. Some of them are quite nice and things you put. So thanks so much for that. Just send that to me. If you don't want to put any message in there, that's fine too. Just put network congestion. I'll know what you want. I'll know what you're looking for. I got you. And I'll about a week, maybe less, I send back a message that has an email that has been digitally signed by me that has a certification that you must have watched 1 hour. Here's a webinar category CEU. Now, technically speaking, you don't even have to go through that process. You just tell CompTIA that you were here for an hour and they take it at your word. But if they come back and want to audit your CEUs, I like that you have an email from me that's digitally signed that proves that you were here just in case. So it's something nice you might want to do. Plus, it's something you can put into your set of documentation, and you might need it for other purposes too. These CEUs can be used for more than just renewing your CompTIA certification, so that's something you can do as well. The super secret code word of the month, network congestion, and make sure you follow that process or you don't get the CEU. The process is just as important as the super secret code word itself. And if you haven't received from me a CEU, might be because you didn't send it in the right way. Make sure you follow that process. And if you have questions about it, you can always send me a note. Catch me on Discord. Lots of ways you can get in touch with me. I think that's a good way to do it. I know it's top of the hour, but let's do one more. Let's fit another question in for the things we were looking for. This question asks, here we go. An administrator is evaluating SSDs to determine which device provides the best performance. Which of the following metrics would best provide this comparison? Would that be jitter, total capacity in gigabytes, RPMs, wattage rating, or IOPS? An administrator is evaluating SSDs to determine which device provides the best performance. Which of the following metrics would provide the best or would best provide this comparison? Would it be jitter, total capacity in gigabytes, RPMs, wattage rating, or IOPS? We have to see which one of those would best provide this comparison. So no, once you lock in your answer, you can't go back and answer. I'm writing that ballpark with you. I always plug in my answer, go, no, that's the wrong. I shouldn't have said that. That's really the other answer. Just remember in your mind, I don't capture these answers. I don't correlate answers to use. You notice you didn't even put a username in. I don't put any of those things in. So make sure you're familiar with what you answered, and we'll be able to figure out the details from that. I think as you go through this might help you quite a bit in figuring out the details. This is really a good question. If maybe this is something you've been faced with, is that your manager comes to you and says, we got all of these different SSDs. I need you to tell me which one's the best. Well, where do we go to even start that process? How would we figure it out? So hopefully you can go through this and figure out the details yourself. A number of you have locked in your answers already. Let's see how you did. The question again asked, an administrator is evaluating SSDs to determine which device provides the best performance. Which of the following metrics would best provide this comparison? Is it jitter, total capacity in gigabytes, RPMs, wattage rating, or IOPS? So let's see how you answered this particular question. 55% of you, so we did get a majority that said IOPS is what we were looking for. 15% say RPMs. Well, we got 22% rather that say total capacity in gigabytes. 15% said RPMs, which would be rotations per minute. And then we've got 4% that said wattage rating and 3% said jitter, effectively a two-way tie for last place. So the real key on this one is that we've got a bunch of SSDs and we need to determine performance. Performance, generally speaking, is something that is going to help you understand how quickly or not quickly we are able to get information on a device or off of a device. How quickly can we make all of this happen? And one of the best ways to do this with hard drives and with SSDs is to be able to look at how much time it takes to read or write from this device. That's what really we're shooting for, is reading or writing. And we need to measure how much we're able to do that, because there are times when we are reading or writing and there might be delays in that process due to the communication method to the device, due to the internal infrastructure, the internal makeup, the physical makeup of that device, the chipset it's using, the firmware that's currently installed on that device. There's lots of variables when it comes to evaluating these. If you ever go out and look at a test that's a third-party site does of SSDs, you'll get an amazing feel for that. You'll be able to see all of the different variables that go into understanding how fast or how slow a particular SSD may perform. What we are looking for here, though, is a specific metric, and the metric is called input-output operations per second. It is a very broad metric because it doesn't go into the details of firmware or connectivity or anything else. It's really just looking at a single device, a single drive, and it's evaluating how quickly can we get data into the device, how quickly can we get data out of that device, how much can those really happen. And so IOPS is the abbreviation of that, which is input-output operations per second. This is a very good way to make these determinations. If you want kind of a relative definition, a relative comparison of IOPS, very commonly, if you're working with a hard drive, it's not unusual for a hard drive to support 200 input-output operations per second. So 200 IOPS. An SSD can support around 1 million IOPS per second. So that's one that absolutely would be extremely useful to have an SSD. Already you could see, if you had to choose, which should you choose, a hard drive or an SSD if performance was the issue, you can see why we always tell you, oh, you should get an SSD. It's like a brand new computer, they say. It goes so fast. You won't believe how fast. Well, now I can believe how fast, because I have actual numbers that I can use to compare between a hard drive or an SSD. So in our particular case, in this question, we can also use IOPS to compare performance across multiple SSDs to really determine, at least from that specific metric, how well that particular device can input and output data. which is obviously an important metric when it comes to our storage devices. Now, there were other options on here that people chose. For example, 21% of you said total capacity in gigabytes. And although there is somewhat of a relationship between total capacity and IOPS in the world of hard drives, we don't quite have the same relationship in SSDs. The total size or capacity of the device doesn't generally have a dramatic impact on how much the performance is affected by that device. So that's not one we would even consider when we're trying to evaluate performance for an SSD. We've got 15% that said rotations per minute. That's what RPMs is. Obviously, a hard drive will have rotations per minute, and the rotations per minute does become an important metric when you're trying to evaluate the performance of a hard drive. But our question was not about hard drives. Our question was specific to solid state drives or SSDs. Solid state drives don't spin. There are no rotations. If we have rotations with an SSD, you may be sitting in the wrong place. You may be on the teacups at that point, waiting for the ride to stop. That's the only time your SSD would really rotate around, I think. So that would not be one that we would consider for SSD performance. We have 4% that said the wattage rating, and although wattage rating may be a very good metric to use if you're someone who is concerned about overall power usage, this might be important for people that have laptops in the field. It has nothing to do with the performance of the SSD itself, how much data we can move in or out of the device. So wattage rating would probably not be the best comparison. And then jitter is a measure of how much gap we have between one network frame and another. It's all network availability and how much the data on a network is able to arrive at a very common state. So you don't have a lot of gaps between the frames. They're all coming in very evenly across the network. And jitter is a measurement of that gap between the frames on the network. That's obviously a network metric that does not help us with understanding SSDs. So in this case, IOPS is the only option we really had to understand what the performance might be of a solid state drive. If you answered E, IOPS, you got that one absolutely correct. That is the right answer. Well done. Well, I know that for those of you that are working on these exams, you're trying to get through the details of these exams. I always tell you, you need a good book. You need a good video course. Hey, I know where you can get one of those. You need maybe a set of course notes, maybe some hands-on. And then ultimately, you need to test yourself to see, have you really retained this information? We've already done some of that today with our Q&A. But of course, you may want to go over to the Professor Messer website and have a look at my practice exams. I have written every single question in this practice exams book. It's a total of 3 separate practice exams, 90 questions in each one of these practice exams, including both multiple choice-based questions like the ones we've been doing and 5 performance-based questions in every single one of these exams. So you've got some options for understanding what type of questions might be asked of you, and then you can help step through what those might be. So I have, for example, I have a copy of my practice exams up. Let's do another question. We'll do a question directly from my practice exams. I have one on the screen. This is question A17 from my very first practice exam. And this question asks, a firewall is configured to block email transfers from a remote server. Which of the following ports is the firewall blocking? Is it 443, 22, 23, or 25? Now, no answers in the chat room, please. We'll keep the same rules that we have in place. But this is one where if we have a PDF reader that we're using, and that PDF reader allows you to annotate, you could draw on the screen. Maybe you're using a tablet where you can write on the screen. You can modify things. You can cross out things. You can change what you're viewing here on the screen. That's one of the benefits of PDF, obviously. But another benefit of PDF is that it has links that I can embed in the PDF itself. So on page 52 is the answer that gives you a lot of details. Well, you could scroll forward to page 52, or you can simply click the details and it takes you right to page 52. There it is. And here's the question again. A firewall is configured to block email transfers from a remote server. Which of the following ports of the firewall blocking? Is it 443, 22, 23, or 25? And you can see that it tells you that the answer is D, 25. And it tells you why that's the right answer. And I think a lot of practice exams do this. They tell you why that is the right answer. My problem, though, is that I always get answers wrong, and I want to know why I got the answer wrong. I think that's the right answer. I need to make sure I've got a good understanding of this topic. So for every single incorrect answer, I document why every one of those is an incorrect answer. 443 is used by SSL and TLS. 22 is used by SSH. 23 is used by Telnet. So I give you this overview because on your exam, this same question might really be asking about SSH, or it might be asking about Telnet, or it might be asking about any one of those. So I try to give you feedback in sort of this loop format so that you can see the question, you can see the right answer, you can see the incorrect answers, and then you're back to doing another question and going through that feedback loop. I would highly recommend, if you are taking this in my practice exams book and you get the question right, I highly recommend you read through the wrong answers, because the wrong answers are often real things. I try to put real things in the answers because that's what you get on the actual exam. And I also give you explanations about those topics so that if you see these on your exam, even though they're the wrong answer on mine, they might be the right answer on yours. So that's another way to help study for the things you're doing. And if you read this question, you have no idea what I'm talking about in this question. What do you mean, a port number? I don't know what this, I'll know what you're talking about. I put at the very bottom a video, a link to the video. You can click that link. It will take you directly to the Professor Messer website, to the video that describes the topic that was listed in the question itself. And then once we're done with this, I can hit the back button in my PDF reader and then go to the next question that's on my list and just do that over and over and over until I get to the very end of things. This is available in my practice exams book, just like my course notes. There's both a physical version that you can purchase. It's a big one, 389 pages. That is available in an easy to carry around format. And there's also the PDF version. And obviously, if you get the physical version, you get the digital edition for free as well. So all of that's available also on my site, professormesser.com/core1PE. That's Core 1 Practice Exams, or just use the links at the top of my site. Hopefully it's something that might help you with your studies as well. All of these questions that are in my practice exams book, all the questions we do in our course, in our study groups, everything that you need to study is in this document. This is the CompTIA exam objectives. I've mentioned this a number of times in the study group. The exam objectives have everything in there you need to know. It is a huge list of everything that you will have to know. And in fact, if you know everything listed in these exam objectives, you're going to pass your exam. That's how good these exam objectives are. And here's the better part. They're free. You can download them directly from CompTIA. Follow the link on your screen, professormesser.com/objectives. Make sure you use that as your checklist during your studies. It's also a great list before you go into your exam to see if you've really studied everything you need to study. You can just go out to professormesser.com/objectives, follow the link over to the CompTIA website, or go to your favorite search engine, type in CompTIA exam objectives. That's another thing that might get you. The first link that comes up will be the exam objectives. It's an incredibly valuable document. If you don't have this already, you are doing yourself a significant disservice. Make sure you get this document and use it and read it and annotate it. And it's a great checklist. You should make sure that you do that. Well, I do one of these study groups every month. We have an A+ study group also in a couple of days on March the 9th. This will be for our Core 2 study group. So please feel free to come back and do our Core 2 on Thursday for those of you that are live here on the Tuesday study group. We've also got other study groups to go through. We've got plenty more during the week. We have a Network Plus study group next week and a Security Plus study group next week, along with study groups for Network Plus in April, on April 12th, and Security is on April the 19th. If you don't know when the next study group is going to be, simply go to professormesser.com/calendar and you'll be able to see when the next live events will be. I keep that constantly updated. There's also a list of events in our Discord that already have the times changed around to match the time zone that you happen to be in with your Discord. So that's an easy way to do it as well. So lots to go through there. Well, stick around. Although we're finished with the part where I ask you questions, we're starting the part where you ask me questions. I will take your questions from the chat room in just a moment. Stick around for the after show. I'll remind you that we've got discounted vouchers on our website at professormesser.com/vouchers. We also have quite a bit available with our course notes and practice exams. Those are also on the website. We've got plenty of things happening throughout the week. You've got your daily pop quiz questions, and don't forget about our Discord link at professormesser.com/Discord. Well, thanks for joining us in this first hour. Stick around for the after show. Much more to come. We'll see you next time on the A+ Study Group. Okay, let's see if there we go, can get things ready for the after show. I'll move over the chat room so that I can talk to the chat. The way this works is that we're just going to open up the chat room for questions. There's a number of great questions that came through. I'll be glad to answer some of those. If you have questions about the exam or the process or the vouchers or IT in general or technology or anything going on in the world, in your world or in my world, I'll be glad to at least look at the question. I don't know if I have an answer for you, but I will look at the question if we do something like that. I'm taking questions directly from the chat. So if you're on my website at professormesser.com/live, you'll notice there's a chat right on the screen. There's also, if you're on YouTube, there's the YouTube chat. Well, it's exactly the same chat. I've got the same chat in both places. So you don't have to go anywhere. As long as you're watching this video, you can also participate in the chat as well. Plenty to go through there. Lots of questions that have been coming in. Let's kind of start at the top of this list, and we'll get a feel for what that happens to be. There's a lot on here to go through. And if someone in the chat room even mentioned, how do we get in touch with you if we want to send you a message? If you already have a member account, you've already purchased products from us before, you can open a ticket from inside of your member login, or you can simply click the Contact Us link that is at the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website. All of that comes to me as well. This is, you don't get questions like this all the time. So, of course, we have to start there with Dennis, who says, there's a dancing school next to my test center. Can I bring an earphone? The exam does not allow you to bring an earphone. However, almost every testing center that I've ever been to will provide, or at least have the option to provide you, if you request, with earplugs. And you might even want to bring some yourself and just show them, can I take these earplugs in with me? Or they might have some they can provide for you. If they're next to a dancing school, I'll bet they have earplugs available already. That can't be annoying at all. Always take your tests on tap day. Maybe that's a bad idea. Find out maybe ballet. Ballet doesn't have a lot of stomping and jump. It has some jumping around, but not a lot. Maybe you go on ballet day. And take your exam then. Or maybe find a different test center, or maybe find some other location. You could always take your test at home, although my personal preference is the testing center itself. But I would bet that they have, I bet they already have the earphones ready to go in that testing center, so that's not a problem. I think you'll be set, and if you may even want to bring some yourself. So I think that's a good way to do it as well. Other questions that are in here. Let's see if we can find others that have come through. A lot of you are typing things in there. Thank you for putting those questions in there, and I'm going to try to get through them one by one. I will naturally miss a couple as they pass by, so I apologize in advance for doing something like that. This was, I think, a question about a voucher, and if it's not Highway, you can tell me. I bought one maybe 2 years ago. Do I need to buy another one since they've updated the exam? Now, I'm assuming you're talking about vouchers. You might not be. Vouchers are usually good for a year and then they expire. So make sure you check the expiration date of your vouchers. If you bought a voucher 11 months ago for A+, you can still use that voucher today as long as it's still valid, as long as it had that 1 year expiration, because it doesn't matter which version of the exam you use the voucher on. It's simply an A+ voucher. It doesn't matter which version of the exam. It doesn't matter which number of the exam. It's just an A+ voucher. You can use it on any A+ exam. So that might be easy. Can I use, here, this is a pretty good one. So this kind of fits into that same scenario. Christopher asks, can I use the 1101 material to study for the 1001? My school gave us vouchers for the 1001, not the 1101. Well, again, the vouchers aren't specific to an exam version. So your school gave us vouchers for the A+. It doesn't matter what A+ that happens to be. Even if the voucher has a number on it, it is probably also going to work fine with the newest version of the exam, because the 1001 and 1002 exams retired last year. Can't take them. They're not available. I think they're available in some other languages. So if you speak Japanese, you're still able to take those older exams. But for those of us that are in an English-speaking country, the only exams you have available are the 1101 and 1102. And I would bet that the voucher you have is going to work just fine with the 1101. The CompTIA doesn't restrict things that way. That would just make things way too difficult on the back end to manage that process. Can you imagine if you had to buy a voucher for a specific exam number and a specific exam? That would just be too much. And they just say, no, it's an A+ voucher. You can use it for any A+ exam. You're fine. Because things happen. Life happens. They know that. And they try to make it easy to use those vouchers. You don't want to be caught with a voucher that you can't use. Shaw says, can you share today's video through YouTube? Every video we do for a study group is available on YouTube immediately afterwards. There's a couple of minutes they use to process, but it's always available immediately afterwards on the YouTube side. So that makes things very, very, very easy. Other questions? Let's keep going. Other things, I want to make sure as I scroll through here, I'm not missing any on the list. Of course, I just scrolled and everything went by, and then I missed everything. Other questions. Here's one. Let's say you have 8 certifications from CompTIA. First, you don't sleep, apparently. They're all about to expire. Do you have to get 20 CEUs per certification? And then if the 3 years are up, are you no longer certified? So let's break this down. Let's break down the process of renewing your certification. So on the CompTIA website, and I'm going to quickly move this over and bring up a different connection for CompTIA and make this a full screen. Let's go out to the CompTIA website and let's kind of break this down so that you can see what we might be doing with this. So let's go to the CompTIA website. I guess it'd be good if I brought it up on the screen myself so that you could see it as well. So here we are on the CompTIA website, and they're already asking me, what brings you to site today? Well, we're doing a live stream, and I'm just trying to answer a question. That wasn't one of the options. Across the top is the continuing education option. And this continuing education option gives you different things that you could do. Kind of tells you you can renew, you can do this, you can do that. Why do you need to renew? Learn about the process, choose the path, submit your CEUs. We're going to choose the path because what you probably want to do is renew with a single or multiple activities. Let's say that you're renewing with a single activity, and you'll see why I choose this in just a moment. And we're going to look at the renewal options. The renewal options are to take the CertMaster CE. I think that's a very common way to do it. Your question, I think, talked about these exams and taking a lot of exams. And if you take a higher level CompTIA exam, it renews everything that's a lower level exam. So let's say that you have taken A+ and passed it. You also earned your Network Plus certification. So you have 2 CompTIA certifications right now. And you're working on your Security Plus. But the A+ and the Network Plus they're coming up on their 3-year renewal cycle. Do I need to go through and renew my A+ and then renew the Network Plus and then finally take the Security Plus? No. But what you want to do is simply take the Security Plus exam, because when you pass Security Plus, it fully renews the Network Plus and the A+. So this diagram on the website can kind of step you through every single one of these scenarios that you could see. If you take the Network Plus, it renews the A+. If you take the A+, well, it doesn't renew anything. But if you take Security Plus, it renews both of those. So you have options. You don't go through and renew each one of those individually. You instead go through and renew the highest level certification that you currently have. So that way you aren't collecting a bunch of CEUs. You're not trying to figure out which one you renew first. You just renew the highest one, and then all of your other certifications sync up to the same renewal date as the highest level certification that you've taken. So that makes it a little bit easier. Hopefully that answers that first part of the question. Also, if your 3 years are up, are you no longer certified? That's correct. When you pass an exam, you earn your certification. Let's say today we have passed the second A+ exam. We are A+ certified on March the 7th, whatever day this is, of 2023. So in March the 7th of 2023, 4, 5, 6, once we get to 2026 and March 7th appears and we get to March the 8th, we're no longer certified if we didn't renew it. So our renewal, our certification disappears. You're no longer certified. You can't renew something that has expired. So I always tell people, be aware of that 3-year date. Put it in your calendar. Make sure you maybe months before, a year to go, 6 months to go, 3 months to go, a month to go, put those in so that you can keep track of when these certifications may expire. Because once they expire, you'd have to take both of the A+ exams again to be certified again. And you don't want to do that. It's so much easier to renew than it is to ever take the exams. So I highly recommend you do that. Pretty important. Other questions. Cross says, do they change any of the content of the exams throughout the year or rotate through their numerous questions that all reflect the content? Yeah. Yes, they do. They don't change the exam objectives, but they change the questions. I don't know if they do it constantly. I don't know if it's something where there's on as they go, cycle some out as they cycle others in. I don't know if they replace everything with new questions. I don't know. I'm not involved in that process, nor do I want to be. But they do update things, change things, add new questions, remove questions, make things different on the screen. So I would recommend that if you're somebody who is kind of worried about the exam, don't be. The topics on the exam never change. Just the questions on the exam might change. So if you stick to the exam objectives, you're fine. They're never going to deviate from those exam objectives. They rarely will ask you a question that comes off of those objectives. And that's why I tell people, if you do nothing but study those objectives, you stay right in there, you put blinders on and you just study the objectives. There we go. Then you're going to do fine, because if you know all of the objectives, you're going to pass your exam without a problem. And so I highly recommend you have a look at that. That's a useful one there. Do I cover system administration questions? I do on the Core 2 exam, because the Core 2 exam has a lot of information about Windows, Linux, Mac OS. There's command lines, there's demonstrations, there's a whole lot there. There's not a lot of system administration in the Core 1. There's some troubleshooting that's in the Core 1 that I guess you could fit into the system administration bucket. But most of the system administration is done in the Core 2 exam. And I guess if you were doing a Microsoft certification, especially one relating to the Windows operating system or to the cloud, there's probably quite a few system administration questions in those. But for A+, almost all the sysadmin stuff is over on the Core 2 side. Highway says, I bought your study package 2 years ago, but they updated the exam. Is that material still good, or is there a new updated version? The 2 years ago would be the 10.01 and the 10.02. We're now on the 11.01 and 11.02. So there is new material that is very different than the previous version. However, if you previously bought something from me for the old version, there's an upgrade available in your member login. Simply log into professormesser.com/members or choose the member link at the top of the site. Log in, and next to what you bought, there will be an upgrade link, and you can buy the latest version, but you're not paying full price for the latest version because you're a previous customer. So it doesn't cost this. You don't have to pay the same amount as if you were buying it new. It's a discounted price because you already have that particular product and you're simply wanting to upgrade it, because sometimes we don't have time to take the exam. The world slips away from us. We get involved in something else. Life happens and we're not able to take the exam. I don't want to penalize you for that, but it does cost money to create these new exam series. So this is sort of the middle ground for that. I give you a little bit of a discount. You get the new products, then you can kind of keep the whole party going there. So that's a good way to do it. And if you have questions about it, open a ticket, send me a contact us link, and we can figure out the details of those specifics. It's pretty easy to work out on my side, so just let me know. Other questions? Let's keep going. Let's see. This is an interesting question that is constantly changing as we sit here. There's a lot of discussion about this right now on a number of sites I visit, because obviously during the COVID times, when everybody was off site, we were doing all of our normal system administration work from the luxury of our own homes. This was great. We didn't have to commute. We didn't have to go into an office and say good morning. And then what do you say the second time you see the person? Like, I guess you do your head. Like, yeah, we already said good morning, so we're just going to do this. Yeah. How's the coffee? Doing good? How about that heat? Is it raining outside? Do the normal things you do in the office. And a lot of folks, they like working at home. Well, now we're starting to see more of a shift back to working in an office. So I think what you'll see over the next year or so is more of office type, going into an office and working there than working at home. There are some companies, though, that have realized the computer people that come into the office, the IT team, they sit at their desk and they manage servers that are located around the world. They don't have to be sitting at their desk to do that. So the logical next step for many organizations is don't even come into the office. You can do your job at home. You've shown that you've been able to do that at home just fine. We could save the space in the office, have somebody else use that desk so you can stay at home. But we're seeing there seems to be a bit of a shift where there's more people now in IT working in the office than there has been. So just another one of those trends. We're sort of figuring it out as we go along. And that's something you'll have to bring up with your employer or prospective employer as to what their particular policies might be. Thomas asks, this is, I'm guessing, specific to the exam. Am I allowed to get a cheat sheet, maybe one paper to bring into the exam? No, you are not. Cheat sheets are not allowed on the exam. So that's not something that's going to help you very much. The exams themselves require you to walk into the room with nothing. So if you're in a testing center, you leave your phone, you leave your car keys, you leave anything you brought with you, a wallet that's left in a locker outside of the room. So cheat sheets are specifically forbidden. All you get is a blank piece of paper and something to write with when you walk in. Usually it's a dry erase type of scenario. So they give you a dry erase pen and a laminated sheet of paper, and that's all you get. So nope, you can't do it. You can't make that happen. Let's see other questions that you've brought in. Let's see what else might be there. I've just had one of my monitors. I'm going to show you what I'm seeing here. Well, I can't show you what I'm seeing here. There we go. Now I can't see what you're seeing because this monitor here has now decided, oh, there it goes. It's back. I don't know. I don't know what it's doing. So I think I have a bad HDMI cable. Let's keep it moving, though. But that's why a cheat sheet is not allowed. Now, when you start the exam, you have this blank piece of paper. You could start writing things down. So if you remember some things, you just want to jot those down before you get into the exam. That's one way to do it. But technically, you have to wait for the exam to start writing on that piece of paper. So that may or may not be a good strategy. You need to determine if that's a good strategy or not. Would the Cert Master for A+ be matching the objectives of the exam? Most certainly. Now, you didn't say which Cert Master application you were referring to. Cert Master is a brand of training materials. There's Cert Master Learn. That's sort of an all-in-one, everything, all-inclusive learning package. There's Cert Master Practice, which is test questions. There's Cert Master Labs, so hands-on, virtualized, really nice labs for Cert Master are available. Those are all different Cert Master products, but they all match or apply towards the objectives of the exam, of course. Yeah, you wouldn't want to use something that didn't match the objectives of that exam. That would not work for you either. This is an interesting question. This is more of a question that you might see on the 1001 exam, the one that recently retired, because the 1001 asked you to understand the difference between a virtualized environment and an emulated environment. Stoic asks, can VT be considered an OS emulator? I used to turn my old laptop into a Game Boy and Nintendo as a kid. It sounded really similar. It's similar in function, but very different in what's happening behind the scenes. A virtualized environment is when you are running an operating system on the same chipset as that operating system would normally run. So if you're running an Intel platform and you're running Windows on this Intel platform, and then you start a virtual machine inside of that Windows platform, it's also going to be using that Intel platform on the virtual machine. So it's same to same. It's like to like. That way, the CPU of your computer can interoperate with the VM in exactly the same way that CPU interoperates with the normal operating system that you use. An emulator, the technical term for emulator, means that you're running a different type of code that was designed for a different instruction set than the CPU that's running in your system. For example, Game Boys and Nintendos don't have Intel chips inside of them as their main CPU. So we have to tell the Intel chip, pretend that you are a Game Boy. You're going to be getting a lot of different instructions. I need you to convert those instructions into something Intel can understand, and then we're going to convert those back into something Game Boy can understand. So there's a conversion process in the middle. Think of it as a shim or a middleman that's sort of translating for you. A universal translator is what you can think of as an emulator. It's not something that is the same chipset or the same underlying hardware infrastructure, which is what you get with a VM. That's why when I moved, for example, recently, I moved from an Intel-based Mac to the new M1, M2-based Mac. I had to change all of my virtualized environments because I had built a bunch of VMs to work on Intel, and then I moved to a different CPU inside of my computer that still ran Mac OS, but all my VMs were expecting Intel. So I had to rebuild the VMs that I needed to use to be able to run in this brand new environment because it's not emulating, it's virtualizing. And that's one of the big differences. That nuance between virtualization and emulation is not covered on the 1101. It was dropped from the 1101. So if you see a question about that in your studies, you're reading old questions. Another bad reason another good reason to avoid bad questions on the internet. That's the real key. Along that same line, JetSet says, okay, so what is the difference between 1001 and 1101? Quite a few. Enormous number of differences. So make sure you grab both of those exam objectives and look through them. It will be very obvious when you start going through it what the differences are between all of those. Other questions. Let's see what else we have out there in the world. So this is one I think is we may want to take to a different level. Levin says, I just started studying for the A+. It's a little overwhelming on how best to study. Well, you're not wrong. You are absolutely in the right group of people. We all feel this way about the A+. So what's the best way to study? Everybody has a different way to study. Some people prefer video. Some people like reading out of a book. Some people must have hands-on. Other people are fine with just Q&A. Some people need all of these to be able to have the best chance of passing this exam. So everybody's a little bit different. I would recommend you go over to our Discord. Go over to professormesser.com/Discord, where everybody there is studying in a different way. And they can all provide recommendations, suggestions, ideas, thoughts. And one of the nice things is they all get together into a video sharing room or a voice sharing room, and they like to watch the videos and step through all of them while everybody is there in the same room. And if somebody has a question about technology, somebody else has an answer about that, and you can all discuss it together. We have A+, Network Plus, Security Plus, and even more different rooms that you can start up and start studying immediately on our Discord. I looked on there last night. There were 25 people in a A+ study room. There were 15 people in a Network Plus study room. So you've got lots of options for studying over on our Discord. It really is a great community of people. Everybody's there to get a job or get a better job. Everybody wants that certification. You don't find that very often on the internet. So we work very hard to make sure and maintain that level of focus. So join us over there at professormesser.com/Discord. That's my biggest recommendation for doing that. Other questions? How are we doing on time? We're doing really, really good. other questions? BMS is jealous of my battle station. It is where everything happens. This is it. This is the studio. So I have now collapsed everything we're doing into one desk, which has been remarkable by itself, to say the least. To have that there, looking at my breakdown here, I'm noticing I'm not recording anymore down here. So I'm trying to figure out why I'm not doing that. Everything's on the YouTube now. We're going to the secondary side to make that happen. Yep, it never really recorded. So maybe I never started it, which is probably more accurate. But thank you on the battle station comment. We work hard to get this battle station in place. I'm always tweaking and making changes and moving other devices in and moving devices out. So it never stops. It's always something that we're doing in all of this. So to make that happen. So Robbie mentions, and this is specific only to vouchers, but he says, why do you only provide voucher discounts for the U.S. and Canadian customers? I feel left out in Scotland. And you're right, Robbie. That is a problem that I only have voucher discounts available for Canadian, U.S., and U.S. territories. And most of the problems around that are because if you buy a voucher in Scotland, you have to use the local fiat to be able to buy that. They're sold that way on the CompTIA store, which means I would need to first purchase them in euro or pounds in this particular case. I need to buy them in whatever the local currency is for South Africa, for Australia, for Japan, for Scotland, for Ireland, for UK, so there's some I can group together along those lines, but then I have to buy them in that currency. You're going to purchase them in that currency, and then somehow the currency has to get from that type format back to US. And as you can imagine, if you've ever bought anything in different currencies, you know that nothing is free. They don't allow you to buy things in a different currency generally unless they add on a little bit of a charge to convert that to your local fiat. So that's your real problem, is that I have to get it out of pounds, euros, won, yen, or whatever it is, and get it converted into US dollars and back, which has some significant challenges logistically, but nothing too bad that we couldn't figure out. The real problems, though, are financially measuring and taxing that in the appropriate way. And I got to tell you, that's the real stumbling block, is trying to make all of that happen. This is one where, say what you would like about cryptocurrency. This is a scenario where cryptocurrency would solve a ton of problems, but the people that charge the extra money to do currency conversion, they don't want you to do that. So I think that may be part of what's going on, is it becomes very, very difficult to do that. So that's why you don't see that you don't see availability in other countries, just because there are a lot of roadblocks set up that would prevent me from doing that easily. I'm trying to find a better way to do it. It's just constant problems and being able to make that happen. I want to thank Antoine in the chat room with the $10 super chat. Antoine says, passed my Network Plus 2 weeks ago, thanks to you. Well, I'm just sitting here. I didn't do anything. You're the one that did the hard work, Antoine. Congratulations on the super chat, on the passing the Network Plus. Thank you for the super chat. And congratulations on your Network Plus again. I think the Network Plus is probably one of those certifications where it is so integral to the rest of IT. Everything touches the network, everything. And the more you know about the network, I think the better of a technologist you will be in almost any aspect of IT, in every aspect of IT. So congratulations on your Network Plus. It's a good jumping off point. And I think a lot of folks they're very good at finding the right way to implement and get these certifications. I think Network Plus is a really good one. I missed Faust earlier. I'm so sorry. Faust, thank you for the $20 super chat. Faust says, thank you for everything you do, Professor. I'm currently taking the CCNA course through Career Choice at work, but I'm fairly new to the industry. Assuming I get my CCNA certification, what cert should I go for after Network Plus? Well, CCNA probably is the next level above Network Plus. If we have to put them in there, CCNA is not. CCNA, for those of you not familiar, is the Cisco Certified Network Administrator. That's not an entry-level course. That is a course that is decidedly next step up from entry level. It's a very hard course and a very hard certification to get. In fact, if you get CCNA, there's not much in Network Plus then that you don't already know. There are some topics in Network Plus that aren't covered in CCNA. So it may be worthwhile to get both, but you would probably have to look at what your career options are, what people are looking for in your area, what job postings have CCNA and Network Plus in them, and then you can make the decision on which one of those is probably the better one to do. So I think that's a good place to go is with those, is figuring out the details. But where you go next, and this really applies to everybody, where you go next for your next certification is based on a number of different criteria. And there's not a single right answer for anybody. There's a right answer for you. So you may want to look at what your career goals are, what jobs are available in your area, what are employers looking for, both short-term and long-term, to be able to do this. You may find that everybody in your area is looking for cloud-based certifications. So you may want to get an Amazon or a Microsoft cloud-based cert. Or maybe everybody's looking for Security Plus. Maybe you work in the DC area and all the jobs want you to have Security Plus, it seems. Well, then Security Plus might be the right answer. So I think that's one where we kind of have to turn the question around and say, I'm ready to do another cert, but what do people want me to have? And then you can decide based on what other people want if that's a good step for you, if that's the right direction for you. And I think that's a good way to approach that. There's never a right answer unless we're able to sit down and really go through it. We'd have to get a coffee, talk about what your goals are. What are you doing with the family? Do you want to travel? Do you want to stay at home? Do you want to work in an office? What type of technology interests you the most? What are employers in your area looking for? Do you see a trend in your area? Are certain companies moving in or moving out of the area? There's all these variables. So I often say that it's never any one thing, and whatever I tell you is probably going to be wrong. You need to do that study for yourself. I do have a video that kind of steps through the process of this. It's linked in this YouTube video description. It's called How to Get a Job in IT with No Experience or something like that. That's the title. But I go through in that 30-minute video. It's a long video in my world. But it's chock full of information. It just has tons of detail in there. Like the videos in my course, there's not a lot of gaps in there. It's just constant information. So I would recommend having a look at that video too, because it describes someone getting into IT. You may have to pull from a lot of different areas. And I really document 4 different elements that are great to have in that video. That might be worthwhile. It might give you a different approach to that particular question. But also thanks again for the $20 super chat. Thank you so much for your support, and best of luck with that CCNA. You're going to do fine on the CCNA, especially if you're taking it at work through Career Choice. I think you're going to be fine getting that cert. So that's my recommendation as well. Other questions. This is a good one. So this is one I get all the time. First, that's pretty awesome. Best eCar says, almost every help desk job wants something besides just A+ and Network Plus knowledge. Stuff like Squirrel, I'm sure that's what you meant, Azure, years of hands-on networking experience. You have to have some level of knowledge of nuclear fusion and nuclear fission. You have to have an understanding of how the universe was made, and you need 600 years of experience in cloud-based technologies. You know, that type of thing is so typical, though. You read through some of these help desk jobs, and you want the world in a help desk person. Who in this universe has that level of knowledge? Nobody. Very few people. But this is sort of the challenge with especially large companies. It happens with small companies too, is they just copy and paste a job description, or they put together a job description without asking the people who are doing the actual hiring as to what people would want. So I tell folks, don't worry what they're asking for. If you believe that you are qualified for this particular position, regardless of their many lists of things that say required, send them a resume. What's it going to hurt? All they can say is no. The thing you don't want to do is to look at a posting for a help desk position. It's entry-level help desk, it's junior help desk position, or whatever it is, and you're looking at it and go, I pretty much, this fits where I am in my career. That's the job I need to go after. Yeah, but it says they want Azure, so I'm not going to send a resume. Why would you do that? It may be that nobody sending their resume in has Azure on it. You are not the one who should be saying no to yourself. Let somebody else tell you no. As badly as that sounds, I think in the world, think of dating. You're trying to date one of these companies. And just like dating, you could say, hey, do you want to go get some coffee sometime? No. All right. All right. How about you? You want to go get some coffee sometime? No. All right. Let's go to another. After a while, you kind of get used to the rejection. It's just normal. I'm on the internet with live streams and videos. I'm used to people yelling at me and saying things about me. It sort of is normal for me. So rejection, okay, that's fine. I'm now going to go to the next one. Eventually, somebody's going to say, well, let's have a look at what you got. Let's have a conversation. And that's where you can then focus your efforts. But let them be the one to reject you. The other benefit of this, by the way, is that when you give someone your resume, they don't throw it away. In fact, most of the time, the resume is digitized and it's sitting in a stack. And you don't know, next week, that company might say, the CEO is going to show up and go, guess what, everybody? We are expanding our company and creating an enormous data center right here in our hometown. And we're going to need to hire 100 people, 200 people. And we need a bunch of help desk folks that'll be in this data center. Gosh, where are we going to find those people? Oh, I have a big stack of resumes. I'll go through those. And your resume is in that stack now. They will tell you usually when you submit a resume, we'll keep this on file for 6 months. Now, what I always thought is when they say, oh, we're going to keep your resume on file, what I thought they meant is they balled it up into a tiny little ball and they threw it in the trash can. But actually, that's not what happens. They actually keep it in a stack of resumes. In this case, these days, it's not a stack, it's a file. It's a digital representation of your resume. But now they have your details. And you may find them calling you 3 months later saying, yeah, we had your resume on file. Maybe there's something here that you might want to have a conversation with us about. So send it in. And if they send you a rejection letter, just save the rejection letter. Make a folder in your email. This will be very cathartic. Make a folder, take all the rejections, and just put them in that folder. And then when you're feeling down, go back to the folder and read through how much they hate you. And then you realize, actually, it's not as bad as I thought it was. Actually, I'm doing fine. I've just got all these rejections here. You get used to it after a while. So let them reject you. Eventually, you'll find somebody who wants to have a date. And that's the real key. And that's, by the way, that's normal. That's the way it works. I give you some tips on how to circumvent some of that within that video that I have of how to get a job in IT with no experience. It's probably that fourth element that I mention in that video that gets you past some of those roadblocks. I got hired to my last position as a next generation firewall systems engineer. I got that job. They did not want to hire me. They took me, I had a phone call. I had an in-person fly out and met with all of the top management of the company, and they didn't want to hire me. And for some reason, I had someone who was already there who was really promoting me, who said, I'm the salesperson. I really want James to be my systems engineer. Go talk to him again. And they flew me. We literally, I knew this was bad. We flew to an airport and we chatted in a conference room in the airport because they were on their way somewhere else. And this was a layover. And I thought, this will never go anywhere. You know, I'm so low on the totem pole that he could have spent his time at the bar in the airport. having a conversation with me, I think, is probably just one underneath that. It's just one step worse is to have a conversation with me, but he did. And for some reason, after rejection after rejection after rejection within that same company, at the end of it, they finally said, all right, we're going to give this a shot. You know, we didn't want to hire you. They didn't tell me this, but I felt it. We didn't want to hire you, but this guy we hired, who we really like, says that you would be good for this role. So we're going to trust him, and we're going to see how it works out, and we'll probably end up firing you eventually, I guess. But it didn't happen. I got on board, and I applied myself, and I proved myself, and I stayed in that role for probably about 6 or 7 years. But that was a good example of a time where a company's going to reject you and reject you and reject you. And then suddenly at the end of this, they changed their mind. I don't know whether they were interviewing people and nothing was clicking. I don't know if the person internally promoting me. I should probably circle back to the guy who hired me and get the end of that story, because now I'm really curious. Why did they hire me? It did not seem like that's what they wanted to do, and yet they did. And it was a great job, and I loved it, and met some amazing people and worked with technologists that I didn't even know existed in the world. Just an amazing place to work. So I got the job. But I probably gave up like after the trip out there, and kind of got the feedback, like I kind of got the backscatter on that one. They said, I don't know if that's going to work out. It's just the way it goes. Sometimes you can wow people. Sometimes they don't take it. So you never know how these things are going to turn out. I didn't take myself out of the running. I just put myself there and said, I'd love to work for you. Let's do something. And it worked out. And they even paid me pretty well. They didn't lowball me. They actually paid me a good number. So there you go. Beats me, but it all worked out. And that was my last official job working for a third party, and stayed there about 7 years. It was a great position, and loved it, and met people and traveled and just had a blast. You don't do that type of thing very often. So it's one of those fun places to work. That doesn't happen all the time either. Other questions. Let's keep going through the list, because I'm coming up on my hour cutoff. I don't want to go too much over that. So we'll step through a number one of these. Other questions. So one of these that came through, this is a great thing. I'm going to put this here because you stuck it in here, Graveyard. It said, I work for the DMV right now. Put your insert sloth joke there. Dead-end job, lousy pay. That's probably about right. But that's government work for you. In fact, it's interesting though, when you get into IT with government, it's a little bit different. It focuses really on flexibility and actually pretty good benefits too. But anyway, past that, Graveyard says, I need this job, help desk or whatever it is, as a foot in the door. And that's probably more than any other type of job. IT and getting your foot in the door is critical. It is so important that you're able to make that happen. Because once you get your first IT job, all other IT jobs will be based on your experience and work that you did in your previous positions. And if you have no previous positions in IT, it's very difficult to break through. But once you get literally your foot in the door, stick that foot in there so they can't close the door. Stay on the help desk for 6 months, for 9 months. We're not talking about, you're not married to the help desk. In fact, you will not stay there for your entire career. Do not worry. But this is a jumping off point. It's a place where you become a sponge. You start listening in to everything going on. You start looking at what's happening in the organization. You start meeting the people and understanding what they do. You learn more about databases. You learn more about networking. You learn more about Active Directory. You learn more about whatever they're doing. That's where you now decide, well, I like what they're doing over on the database side. I really enjoy the networking things they're doing. I like the security piece. Now you can start focusing your efforts on those niches, and you can inform those people. If you ever get an opening for an entry level, I'd love to jump into the networking team. If I was to do that, what would you recommend I have in my bag ready to go? And they might say, oh, if you're joining us, go get your CCNA and let me know. Oh, if you're going to get in databases, go get this database certification. Oh, you're going to be working with the cloud team, go get this Azure certification, go get this AWS certification. They'll tell you the things you can do to improve yourself in that role that would make yourself attractive to that particular team. Because your foot's in the door, they're not asking you anymore what your GPA in college was. Thankfully, mine was pretty bad. I was not a good college student, but I graduated. I'm not sure how that happened. It was a mistake. I'm certain of it. But once I got my first job, they never asked about that anymore. It was all about, what do you know in IT? How can you bring those IT skills to us? How can you help us with the IT needs that we have? So go get your foot in the door. Go make that happen. It's incredibly important that you're able to do that. I would really, for anybody who's doing this, because I hear this all the time where people say, well, I'd love to get into IT, but I'm not going to get in that help desk. I do not want to work in help desk. Well, it turns out help desk is probably one of the largest entry-level positions in IT. So you're blocking out a great opportunity to get your foot in the door. I started as an IT. Technically speaking, I guess you could call this IT. My first job was in college. I worked in the college computing center with mainframes and supercomputers. And it was at 4 o'clock, I would show up, I would sit around and watch the systems and make sure nothing crashed. I'd pull printouts off the printer. I put tapes on the tape drive. I pull plotters off the plotting machine. And doing that till 11, whatever that range, 3 to 11 or whatever the thing was. And then 11 o'clock, I'd go home. And so I could take classes during the day. I could work, part-time at night, put a little bit of cash in my pocket. But for me, it was really about, look at all this cool computer stuff and learn as much as I can. I sat there and I read the manual when I was in operations. So I understood on this screen that I'm looking at, they said to fix the problem, press T, hit enter, and press the number 1. And I would ask, what does that do? They go, well, I don't know, but that's what they told us to do. They told us to press T, press enter, and press number 1. And whenever it would happen, I would press T and I would press enter, I press number 1. It would work. But I want to know, why did that work? What am I doing? What does T do? What does the enter do? What does 1 do? And so I want to grab the manual and learn more about it, so that when that would come up again, I understood what was happening. What was I really doing there? And that kind of positioned me for, really, without me understanding it, positioned me for the rest of my career. Because in IT, you're never going to know 100% of what you're doing. Technology is vast. It is huge. It is complex, and it's constantly changing. There's new things coming down the line every day. And so you're never going to know everything. Nobody is going to know everything. You will be in this constant cycle of doing, learning, doing, learning, doing, learning. And you're simply accumulating knowledge as you go. You're kind of putting it into a big stack. So when you show up for your first job, you have a stack of knowledge this big. Then when you show up for your next job, you go, well, I got a stack this big of knowledge I can bring to you. And they go, oh, good. We're looking for somebody with about that much knowledge. And then you work in that job and your stack gets bigger and you go to the next job. You keep leveling up every time. So I would tell all of you who are maybe nervous or not sure that an entry-level help desk job is for you, because you think of a help desk job as Judy, the Time Life operator, with her headset on in this enormous sea of people, and all you're doing is taking calls over the phone. There's really not a lot of help desk jobs like that. There are some, of course. But most of the time, you're in a corporate environment. So you're an employee, you're getting corporate benefits. You're working with nice people in a corporate professional scenario. So you don't have angry people on the phone who are treating you poorly, like the worst things you can think of. Most of the time, it's actually quite nice. And you're helping people solve the problems that they have. I think that's one of the things I loved about IT, is that it's a problem solving. Here's a problem that you have not seen before. Now go fix it. And then do you move, you move the tiles around the screen? Do you try to figure out the mathematical equation that gets you in? Do you solve that problem in a way that makes sense for what that person's trying to do? You solved the problem, you fixed it, and now they can do their job, and now you've learned something. That solving problem piece is probably the part that I like the most. because there's always a query, there's always an issue, there's always something that needs to be fixed. And finding the fix is the fun part. Once you implement the fix, that's kind of boring at that point. Well, we fixed the problem. Really, the fun part was researching, finding out what was going on, testing, and then, aha, I figured it out. There's nothing more exciting than that. So that's why I, of course, work along those lines to try to find and fix the problem. And kind of makes the job fun when you're doing that problem solving. A lot of in IT, regardless of what type of position I had, whether it was help desk or an engineer or a technician or whatever I did, there was always something not working that needed to work. There was always a problem that someone presented that needed a solution. And that ultimately was the same scenario that I went through my entire career, all the way from being a field service engineer where I drove around and replaced printers and monitors and cables, all the way up into working as a cybersecurity SE. So you just never know what path you're going to take and what the things you do very early on end up helping you with later on in your career. It's the beauty of IT, I guess, and the way it works through this. A lot of great things to go through, a lot of different options. And if you're ever in the position where you're trying to figure out, do I really want this first job in IT? Yes, you do. Put your foot in the door. Everybody's going to expect you to be there 6 months. And from that point, you should be jumping off to the next thing. And that's just the nature of help desk. The people who are hiring for the help desk, they already know this. And that's why in the interview, if they ask you, where do you see yourself in a year? Like, well, I want to be in this job. I want to learn as much as I can. And hopefully I can use that knowledge to continue to work with this organization in a role that would provide additional technology and responsibility. There you go. Answered the question. Next, and through all of those. So that's my recommendation. I'll sort of end on this one because I think there's some interesting things along those lines. Let me first bring out a thing so that I mentioned this, I think, in a previous study group, and having this here is, and you'll understand my answer once I have this here. So the question is, hey, professor, what do you think of TestOut? If you've never seen TestOut, they're very big in the K through 12. So before college, TestOut has a pretty big group, a big Rolodex, if you will, of organizations, of educational organizations they work with. And I see TestOut a lot of places. However, TestOut even has their own certifications. They have TestOut certs, which in the industry I don't know if is important for the rest of the industry, because I've never really seen TestOut asked for on a job description. Maybe there is one, but they're just not common to see that. The TestOut, though, is just something a lot of high school students will use, and then they can earn, or at least get a feel for earning a certification at the end of TestOut, even if the certification is coming from TestOut. But they're no longer TestOut. Not sure if you're familiar with this. They are, let me see if I have something I can put up on my screen, which would not be this. It would be this. So I've got all kinds of stuff on my screen. Here we go. There it is. So TestOut, don't know if you realize this, back in January, TestOut was acquired by CompTIA. So now anytime you see TestOut, you really are seeing CompTIA. CompTIA and TestOut not just joined forces. CompTIA bought TestOut. They acquired them. This is a press release, so they're a little bit flowery in their terms and their words. Accelerating the shared goal of empowering millions of students with technical training and digital literacy education. Blah, 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 just marketing. But the real goal, the real piece of this is CompTIA has announced the strategic acquisition of TestOut. They own them 100%. I think TestOut was a private company, so we don't know the details. For those in the business world, we don't know the details of the transaction. But they bought them for a pretty penny, probably to get that K through 12 Rolodex if I had to speculate. I know nothing about the details of this deal. I know nothing about what happened behind the scenes. All I know is what I read in the trade magazines and on the CompTIA website with their press release. But TestOut, pretty big deal. They bought that. So anything you see that says TestOut currently is the same company as CompTIA. Obviously, this only happened a month or so ago. So there's been no integration of products at all at this point. That tends to take time, obviously. So you may see some of the TestOut labs or the TestOut books or maybe even some of the other TestOut training systems being used by CompTIA or not. We don't know. So we'll see as time goes on what that happens to be. So at least if that's the scenario, if that's the goal, is to get some type of training. CompTIA is a good place to start, but some of these others, TestOut was obviously good enough for CompTIA. So I personally have not used TestOut. I've heard experiences of people working with it, and those experiences have generally been positive. So that's good. But I personally have not used it. So I don't have a good answer to your question of what I think of it because I just don't. But other people tell me good things. So I don't know if that's good or not, but that's where it is. For those of you, let's circle back quickly. I know I said that was the last thing, but let's circle back because Super Bear Mike says, I remember when I got my first help desk job, I was only studying A+. I didn't even pass yet when I landed the job. So even the process of you going through A+ and talking to the hiring manager for the help desk you already know the terminology. You already know the words that we use. You already know everything around that. So this is a really good example of just having some knowledge in the industry can help you get over that hump, get that help desk position, and really make a difference. That gets your foot in the door. And from there, you just move up from there. It's all about leveling up in IT. And I think that gives you a pretty good place where you could level up as well. I think that's the real key, is making some of that happen. Hopefully that can give you a perspective of what might be good. I know that if you are someone who is working on sort of earning your certification, getting into the industry, that getting that foot in the door is so incredibly important. And these certifications can also help you get there. It's just one of many things you need when you walk in the door or you have one of those interviews with someone else. Well, that's a good place to stop. I think that's a good hour of Q&A. So thank you so much for being here. Whenever we put one of these together, I have all these questions I want to ask. I have all of these Q&A that we'd like to do, but it's so much fun when we have everybody in the chat, everybody participating. It really makes it worthwhile. Thank you so much for your time and your attention and all the support you give us throughout the month. It really does make a difference. Come on back on Thursday. We have a Core 2 study group at noon Eastern time, 2 days from today. Today's Tuesday. This will be Thursday we do that. And then next week, a little bit different in our scheduling. We're doing Network Plus on Tuesday and Security Plus on Thursday, kind of fitting the whole month into those 2 weeks. So for better or for worse. But I've already written all the questions. We're already ready to go. All we need is you. So please come on back for those. We'd love to have you participate. In the meantime, we're over on Discord. Join us there, professormesser.com/Discord. Thanks for joining us here today. Thanks for everything you do throughout the month. And we will see you next time on the A+ study group. Thanks, everybody.